Every monitor in Alex Adeleke's private Zen den. 6 of them, floor to ceiling, curved like the inside of a spaceship, was flashing the same violent red she had only ever seen once before. She was 11 years old, sitting on her father's lap, watching his trading terminal scream the same color while he whispered, "When it bleeds like this, baby, someone is trying to steal the whole thing." She had not thought about that memory in 7 years. Came back now like a slap. The man who owned these screens, the man whose floors she mopped 5 days a week, whose coffee rings she wiped from glass desks worth more than her mother's hospital bill, was not here. Alex Adeleke, the golden boy of Lagos, the man whose name made grown men straighten their ties and lower their voices, was somewhere on the 38th floor closing a deal that smelled like expensive cologne and arrogance. And his empire was burning while he laughed. Adesua stood very still. Her mop dripped on the floor she had just cleaned. On the central screen, numbers cascaded in red waterfalls. Short positions stacking like a demolition crew had taken a sledgehammer to the foundation of Adeleke Tech. Someone was not just attacking the stock. They were trying to bury it. She knew she should leave. She knew she should call his assistant. She knew she should put her mop back in the bucket, walk to the elevator, and pretend she had seen nothing, because that was what a sensible cleaning girl did when she wandered too close to a billionaire's business. But her hand was already in her pocket, closing around the USB drive she carried everywhere. Her father's God key. But wait, before we go any further. A girl with a mop just walked into the most powerful trading room in Lagos. A billionaire has no idea his company is being dismantled from the inside. And somewhere in this building, the man responsible is smiling. This is the story of how a cleaning girl accidentally bought an empire, broke a billionaire open like a geode, and found something neither of them expected. Right in the middle of the wreckage. If you are new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now because we drop stories like this every single week and you do not want to miss it. Like this video, drop a comment telling me Team Adesua or Team Princess. Yes, there is a princess, and yes, she is going to be a problem, and let's get into it. The USB drive was nothing to look at. Black, worn at the edges, with a small piece of electrical tape where her father had written his initials in blue ink. O.B. Aladil Bello. He had been many things. A quiet man, a brilliant man, a man who loved jollof rice and logic puzzles and the particular satisfaction of building something that worked. He had been a software engineer of the kind Lagos produced once a generation, the kind whose name was whispered in tech circles the way people whispered about legends. He had also been broke when he died. At least that was what Adesua had believed. She plugged the God key into the port below the central monitor and waited. The drive had never failed her. She had used it to recover her laptop when it crashed during her final exams. She had used it when her mother's hospital tablet froze and they could not pull up her test results. It found problems like a hunting dog found a scent. Fast, quiet, absolutely certain. What she did not know, what she had no reason to know, was that the God key was not just a recovery tool. Her father had built it for something else entirely. Something larger. He had never told her. He had only said, "One day this will make sense, Sue. Keep it safe." She had kept it safe. She had not kept it away from Alex Adeleke's trading terminal. The screens flickered. The God key interfaced with the system in seconds, its algorithms spreading through the network like water finding every crack. Adesua watched the numbers, recognizing the shape of the attack the way you recognize a face you grew up with. The same cascading short positions her father had shown her, the same coordinated pressure designed to trigger a panic cell. She saw the counterposition the system needed. Simple, clean, a buy wall, large enough to stop the bleeding and flip the pressure back on whoever was attacking. She clicked execute. She did not see the account the God key pulled the funds from. She did not see the name on the trust. She did not see the number. 500 million naira, no, $500 million. Move from a dormant account that had been sitting untouched for 19 years, waiting for exactly this moment as though her father had planned it from the other side of death. She saw the screens go green. All 6 of them. Green and steady and calm. Like the moment after a storm when the air goes quiet and everything smells like rain. Adesua exhaled. She pulled the USB. She picked up her mop. She wiped the small fingerprint she had left on the monitor's edge, straightened the desk chair by 3 centimeters, and walked out of the Zen den exactly as she had walked in. Quietly, without ceremony, carrying the faint smell of floor cleaner and something her father had left her that she still did not fully understand. She went home and made EBA and egusi for her mother and did not think about it again. Alex Adeleke thought about a lot of things. He thought about yield curves and competitor margins and the particular way Lagos traffic could ruin a man's morning. He thought about his tailor's latest delay and the fact that his CFO had been avoiding eye contact for 3 days. He thought, occasionally and with some irritation, about the new cleaner on the 40th floor, who was the only staff member in his entire organization who had not yet learned to be afraid of him. He had tested her on her 3rd day. He had walked past her in the corridor. Not a full walk, more of an emergence, the kind of entrance that made everyone else in a 10-meter radius remember they had somewhere else to be. He had stopped near her mop bucket, considered it for a moment, and then knocked his coffee cup so that it clattered, not spilled, just rattled loud enough to make a person flinch. She had looked up, not with fear, not with the wide-eyed apology he had come to expect from staff. She had looked up with the flat, assessing expression of someone interrupted mid-thought, glanced at the cup, glanced at him and said, without any particular emotion, "You missed the bin." Then she had gone back to mopping. His PA, standing 3 paces behind him, had made a sound like a man who had swallowed his own tongue. Alex had walked away. He had not had a response. This was new. He was not certain he liked it. He was also not certain he disliked it. He filed it in a mental folder labeled Investigate Later and forgot about it for exactly 2 days before finding himself watching the door of whatever room she was cleaning from the corner of his eye. He told himself it was professional curiosity. He had fired 3 cleaners in the past year for snooping. She was an anomaly. Anomalies required observation. This was a reasonable thing to tell himself. He believed it for approximately 3 more weeks. The morning everything changed began like any other Lagos morning. Humid, loud. The city outside already in full argument with itself before 7 a.m. Alex arrived at Adeleke Tech at 6:45. As he always did, jacket already on, phone already in hand, mind already running at a frequency most people never reached before their second coffee. His CFO was waiting at the elevator doors. This was not normal. David Okonkwo was a careful man, a measured man, a man who believed that bad news delivered calmly was better than good news delivered in panic. But standing at the elevator at 6:47 in the morning with his tie slightly off-center and something behind his eyes that Alex could only describe as controlled terror, David Okonkwo was not a calm man. "We have a situation," he said. "Define situation," Alex said, stepping out of the elevator. Overnight, the shareholding, 51% of Adeleke Tech changed hands between 11:40 p.m. and 2 a.m. David paused. "We are no longer majority controlled by the Adeleke Family Trust, sir." The corridor was very quiet. "Say that again," Alex said very softly. David said it again. He had printouts. He offered them. Alex did not take them immediately. He stood in the corridor of his own company, the company his grandfather had started as a data solutions firm in a 2-room office in Surulere, that his father had grown into a tech conglomerate, that Alex himself had turned into the most dominant force in West African digital infrastructure, and he stood there breathing while Lagos went about its morning outside the windows, indifferent and enormous. Then he took the printouts. The new majority shareholder was listed as a dormant trust, activated overnight by a single transaction. The trust name was 3 words that meant nothing to him. Olamide Adesua Bello. Alex looked at the name for a long time. Then he looked at the timestamp. Then he looked at the trading log that showed exactly which terminal had executed the counterbuy that flipped the share position. Terminal 409. The Zen Den. The room no one entered but him. And one cleaner on the 40th floor who had access because she was, as his head of security had put it during her vetting, the only one who doesn't steal the man's protein bars. Alex put the printouts down on David's desk with a steadiness he did not entirely feel. "Find her," he said, quietly, "and get me everything you have on a man named Aladil Bello." He walked to his office. He closed the door. He sat behind his desk, and for the first time in 11 years of running this company, Alexander Adeleke felt something he was not prepared to name. It felt uncomfortably, like the moment before a man realizes his life is about to change and there is absolutely nothing he can do to stop it. The board meeting had not been scheduled. That was the first sign that something was wrong in a way that went beyond a bad morning. Alex called his executive team in at 9 a.m., CFO, COO, head of legal, head of security, and they sat around the long table in the main conference room and looked at each other with the specific expression of people who had all arrived at the same terrible conclusion from different directions. The VP of strategy arrived last. His name was Chukwemeka Emeka to the people who liked him, which was fewer people than he believed. He was in his 50s, tall, with the particular confidence of a man who had spent decades being the smartest person in rooms that could not afford to tell him otherwise. He had been with Adeleke Tech for 18 years. He had been Alex's father's man first, and he had transferred that loyalty to Alex the way a politician transfers allegiance. Smoothly, completely, and with his true priorities absolutely unchanged. He walked in 3 minutes late and sat down like a man who owned the chair. "So," he said, looking at Alex. "Who is she?" "That's what we're going to find out," Alex said. "I already know," Emeka said, and something in his voice made David Okonkwo look up sharply. "Aladil Bello, data engineer, worked with your father's generation, left the industry under difficult circumstances." He said the last two words with great care. The daughter apparently followed him into obscurity. "She works here. Maintenance." The room absorbed this. "You know her," Alex said. It was not a question. "I know of her," Emeka said smoothly. "I think the more important conversation is about intent. A maintenance worker with access to restricted systems, executing trades worth $500 million overnight? That is not an accident, Alex. That is a coordinated attack." He leaned forward. "She was sent by someone. The only question is who." Alex looked at him for a long moment. Emeka held the look easily, the way men who are hiding things learn to do over years of practice. "Get her up here," Alex said finally. Adesua had been on her knees cleaning the grout between the tiles in the third-floor bathroom when security found her. Two of them, which was unnecessary, and she said so. They did not respond. They stood with the rigid posture of men who had been told this was serious and had decided to make sure their body language agreed. She pulled off her gloves. She stood up. She looked at them both with the same flat calm she brought to everything in this building and said, "Am I being fired or arrested?" Neither of them answered, which told her something. She rode the elevator to the 40th floor in silence, her heart doing something complicated in her chest that she refused to allow her face to reflect. She had done nothing wrong. She had seen a problem and she had solved it the only way she knew how. She had cleaned up a mess, which was technically her job description. The boardroom doors opened and she walked in and understood immediately that the atmosphere in the room had nothing to do with gratitude. 8 faces turned toward her. 7 of them held versions of the same expression. Uncomfortable, suspicious, waiting. The 8th face, Alex, at the head of the table, held nothing she could read, which was worse. Emeka was the first to speak. "Ms. Bello." His voice was courteous in the way that sharp things are sometimes wrapped in cloth. "Please sit down." She did not sit down. She stood near the door with her hands loosely at her sides and looked at Alex, not Emeka, because he was the one whose company this was and he was the one she owed an explanation. "I saw your trading screens going red last night," she said without preamble. "I recognized the pattern. My father used to show me what a short sell attack looked like. I used a piece of software he built to execute a counterbuy. I thought I was stopping a small loss. I didn't know." She stopped, measured her next words carefully. "I didn't know the scale of what I was working with. I didn't know it was real money. I thought the God Key was running a simulation." "A simulation?" Emeka repeated. He smiled. It did not reach his eyes by approximately 30 centimeters. "She thought it was a game." "Emeka," Alex said. "One word. A warning." Emeka ignored it. He stood up, straightening his jacket, and looked at Adesua with the measured contempt of a man who had already decided her role in this story and was simply performing it for the audience. "Alex, look at her. She is a cleaner. She has access she should never have been given to a restricted terminal. She executes a trade of this size in the middle of the night using software no one in this building has ever seen. Software that, I should note, was built by a man your father's legal team had significant history with. And you want to believe it was an accident. He picked up his phone from the table and turned the screen toward Alex. I've already spoken to some colleagues at EFCC. They have questions about the trust account. They're here. The boardroom doors opened. For officers in plain clothes. Behind them, 2 uniformed police. They moved into the room with the quiet efficiency of people who had been briefed and were not here to ask questions they did not already know the answers to. The room contracted. Adesua did not move. She watched them arrange themselves between her and the door, and she felt something she had refused to feel since she walked in. A cold, spreading dread that had nothing to do with guilt and everything to do with understanding, for the first time, how completely she had walked into something she did not comprehend. She looked at Alex. He was looking at the data printouts in front of him. He had not looked up since the officers entered. His expression was unreadable. His pen was in his hand, tapping once, very lightly, on the edge of the table. One of the officers stepped toward her. Ms. Bello, we'd like you to come with us for... I was just trying to save your trade, Alex. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Surprised her. She had not planned to say it. But it was in the air before she could stop it, and once it was there she kept going because there was nothing left to protect now except the truth. I was trying to help. I saw something going wrong and I used the only tool I had. I didn't know the money was real. I didn't know the trust existed. I didn't even know my father left me anything. Her voice fractured for half a second. She pulled it back. I just didn't want to watch something break when I could stop it. The room was silent. Alex's pen had stopped tapping. He was looking at her now. The officer took another step. Adesua looked at the floor. The polished, expensive marble floor she had cleaned on her hands and knees 2 weeks ago, and she felt the tears arrive in her eyes with the horrible timing that emotions always have, the worst possible moment, when staying composed was the only dignity she had left. I'm sorry, she said, quietly, not to the room, to him. Alex stood up. It was a slow movement, deliberate. He did not push his chair back dramatically. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood up, and something about the quality of his stillness made everyone in the room recalibrate. The officers, the executives, even Emeka, who had been leaning forward with the barely contained satisfaction of a man watching his plan execute perfectly. Alex picked up the printouts. He looked at them for 10 seconds that felt like 10 minutes. His eyes moved to the trading log, to the timestamp, to the origin point of the short sell attack. Then he looked at the routing data that his team had pulled but that no one at the table had yet discussed, because no one had connected the shell company in the routing log to anything that mattered. Alex had. He knew that shell company. He had seen it once before, 3 years ago, in a subsidiary report he had flagged and then been told was resolved. He had believed that. He looked at Emeka. Emeka was still smiling. A man who had played his game and won and was waiting for the board to ratify the result. Alex walked around the table. Not toward Adesua. Toward Emeka. He laid the routing printout flat on the table in front of the VP and placed one finger on the shell company's registration number. Tell me, Alex said very quietly, how a company registered to a Cayman Islands trust you set up in 2019 ends up as the origin point of an attack on our own stock. The smile left Emeka's face. Not gradually. All at once, like a light switching off. The room held its breath. That's... Emeka started. Don't, Alex said. Please don't. He turned away from Emeka and walked to where Adesua was standing. The officer between them moved aside, not because anyone told him to, but because something in Alex's movement made stepping aside seem like the correct option. Alex stopped in front of her. He looked at her eyes, red at the edges, dry now because she had refused to let them go further, and he looked at the grout still faintly visible on the knee of her uniform trousers, and he looked at the old USB drive she was holding in her left hand with the specific grip of someone holding the only thing that connects them to someone they lost. He turned to face the room. He did not look at the police. He did not look at Emeka. He looked only at Adesua when he said it, and he said it like a man who had arrived at a conclusion and was completely at peace with where it had landed him. She is not a spy, and she is definitely not common. Emeka's chair scraped back hard. Alex. His voice had changed. The smoothness was gone, replaced by something rawer, a man recalculating in real time. Think about what you're doing. She owns your chair. She owns your house. Everything built on Adeleke land is now technically controlled by a trust in this woman's name. You are defending someone who has your entire legacy in her hands and doesn't even understand what she's holding. Alex turned to look at him then, slowly. Then I guess, he said, I'm her most loyal employee. It was the kind of line that should not have worked. It was the kind of line that, in any other room from any other man, would have landed as performance. But Alex said it with the flat simplicity of a mathematical statement. Not dramatic, not cruel, just completely accurate, and the room received it like a verdict. Emeka sat back down. He had no move left to make, and he knew it. Emeka ease, Alex said, turning back to the table. You are dismissed from this meeting and from this company. Effective immediately. David, please escort him out. Security will accompany you. You can't. I still own 49%, Alex said pleasantly, which makes me the second largest shareholder. I have standing. He looked at the senior EFCC officer, who had been watching this exchange with the alert expression of a man recalibrating his understanding of why he had been called here. Officer, Alex said, I believe the entity you should be investigating is a Cayman Islands shell company routing number 4477-CE. I'll have my legal team send you the documentation within the hour. The short cell attack originated there. He paused. I suspect you'll find Mr. Ease's name on several of the signatory lines. Emeka stood up. He was a man who had spent 18 years learning to walk out of rooms with dignity. And even now, even as two security officers materialized at his elbows, he did it well. He straightened his jacket. He looked at Alex with something that was not quite hatred and not quite admiration. Your father, he said, would have handled this differently. Probably, Alex agreed. He might have handled it worse. Emeka left. The door closed behind him and it sounded, in the very specific way that certain sounds do, like a chapter ending. The remaining executives looked at each other. At Alex. At Adesua. At their shoes. Everyone out, Alex said. Legal and CFO stay for 30 minutes. Then you're out too. Ms. Bello is not to be detained, questioned, or approached by anyone in this building without my explicit authorization. Are we clear? Nobody asked for clarification. The building emptied by degrees. Legal spent 30 minutes with Alex going through the trust documents, the trading logs, the Godkeys interface record, all of it pointing to the same extraordinary conclusion. Aladil Bello had set up the trust 19 years ago, capitalized it with funds from a series of patents he had quietly filed under a subsidiary name, and left it dormant with one activation condition. The Godkey, in the hands of his named beneficiary, used in defense of a legitimate Adeleke Tech trading position. He knew, Alex's lawyer said, looking at the activation clause. He knew this could happen. He planned for it, Alex said. But how could he have known? He knew Emeka, Alex said quietly. They worked together in my father's time. He saw what Emeka was. He built a defense mechanism and left it to his daughter to trigger it without even knowing she was doing it. The lawyer looked at the documents in his hands and then at Alex with the expression of someone who has encountered a story that exceeds his professional vocabulary. The trust is fully legitimate. She owns the shares. I know, Alex said. She owns this building, technically. The land it sits on is in the trust portfolio. I know. Alex, leave the documents. Go home. They went. Adesua had not moved far. She was sitting in the smaller meeting room adjacent to the main boardroom, in a chair that was probably worth more than her monthly salary, with a glass of water someone had left for her and her father's USB drive on the table in front of her. She was looking at the USB drive with the expression of someone meeting a person they thought they knew and discovering an entirely different individual. Alex walked in without knocking. He sat down across from her, not at the power end of the table, just across. Two people, a glass of water, a piece of electrical tape with faded initials between them. Your father, he said, was a remarkable man. Adesua looked up. He built a trust with $500 million in it, she said, and never told me. He built a mechanism to protect a company he believed in, and he trusted you to activate it without even knowing you were doing it. Alex paused. That takes a lot of faith in a person. Or a lot of secrecy. Or both. Adesua was quiet. Then, why did he know Emeka? Alex leaned back. The Lagos afternoon pressed gold and orange against the windows. Emeka worked with my father from the beginning. Your father worked with the original team that built our first infrastructure system. He was a contractor, not staff. Something happened between them. I don't know the full story. I think your father found out what Emeka was and paid a price for knowing. He left the industry, Adesua said, almost to herself. He always said it was to raise me closer to home. My mother never questioned it. I never questioned it. He protected you from what he knew, Alex said. And he left you the means to finish what he couldn't. She picked up the USB drive, turned it over in her hands. The small initials OB caught the light. I just thought it fixed things, she said softly. I didn't know it was built to win wars. Most of the best tools are both, Alex said. She looked at him, then really looked at him, and he let her, which was new. Alex Adeleke was not a man who let people look at him. He performed visibility, the deliberate presentation of an image carefully constructed to communicate power and impenetrability. But sitting across from this woman with her mop-calloused hands and her dead father's legacy between them, he found he had no interest in performing anything. Why did you stand between me and the police? She asked. You didn't know yet. About Emeka. You hadn't connected the shell company yet when you said it. Alex was quiet for a moment. I knew the look on your face, he said finally. I've been watching you for weeks. Not because you're a security risk. Because you're the only person in this building who looks at me like I'm a person and not a position. You didn't flinch when I tested you. You don't perform for me. You just, he stopped, found his next word. You're just real. And real people do not plan half-billion-dollar corporate takeovers. They stumble into them with old USB drives and good intentions. Adesua laughed. It came out before she could catch it. A short, startled, completely genuine laugh that seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised him. It was the first time he had heard her laugh. He decided he wanted to hear it again approximately every day for the rest of his life, and this realization arrived so cleanly and so completely that it bypassed every defense he had built over 11 years of turning himself into the golden boy of Lagos, and landed somewhere quieter and more fundamental. He reached into his jacket pocket, not for his phone, for the small velvet box he had put there that morning without quite admitting to himself why. The Lagos sunset did what Lagos sunsets do. It committed. Orange and purple and a gold so thick it looked structural, pressing through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the now empty 40th floor and lying across the marble in long warm bars. Adesua had somehow ended up in Alex's chair. She did not remember deciding to sit there. She had been looking at the view from the window, and then she was sitting in the large, absurdly comfortable CEO chair behind the absurdly large desk. And the view from this angle was different. The whole city spread below her, close and enormous and lit like it was performing. She looked terrified, which was accurate. Alex walked in. He had taken his jacket off, sleeves rolled to his forearms, and he looked different from the man who had walked into the boardroom at 9 a.m. to find his company gone. He looked lighter, like something heavy had been removed. Alex, she said, I'll give it back. All of it. The stocks, the building, the land, whatever it includes. I'll sign whatever I need to sign. I just want... Her voice caught briefly. I just want my old life back. He walked toward the desk. He did not stop at the front of it. He came around the side and leaned both hands on the desk surface, one on either side of her, and he was close enough that she could see the exact moment his expression shifted from the measured seriousness he had worn all day to something she had not yet seen on him. Something open. Keep the company, Adesua. She blinked. What? You're better at it than I am. Your father understood that before either of us did. Alex, I'm a cleaner. You're a woman who walked into a burning situation with a tool her father trusted her with and saved an empire without knowing she was doing it. That is not a cleaner. That is, he paused, searched for the word. That is exactly the kind of person this company should be built around. Adesua stared at him. You're not serious. I'm always serious. Ask anyone. That's not. There's also a clause, he said. In the Adeleke Tech bylaws. She narrowed her eyes. What clause? He reached into his trouser pocket. She watched his hand. She watched it emerge with a velvet box the color of midnight blue, and she stopped breathing in a way that was completely involuntary. The CEO can't work alone, he said. She needs a partner. Not just for the business. Alex. I fell for the woman who cleaned my floors. His voice was quiet now. Not the voice he used in boardrooms. Not the voice Lagos feared. Something underneath all of that, real and slightly unsteady and entirely certain at the same time. I think I'm ready to worship the woman who owns my world. He opened the box. The ring inside caught the sunset light and scattered it across the ceiling in small gold fragments. Will you stay? Not as my maid and not just as my boss, but as my wife. Adesua's mouth was open. The ring was out of the box. Alex was holding it at the edge of her finger, right at the first knuckle, watching her with an expression that had nothing calculated in it. The man who cold-walked through boardrooms and made executive teams rearrange their schedules around his moods was looking at her like she was the only fixed point in a moving world. She had been alone for a long time. Not in the way people are alone when they have no one around them, but in the deeper way, alone in the carrying of things. Carrying her mother's hospital bills, carrying the gap her father left, carrying her own ambitions quietly inside her because there was no space in her life to put them anywhere. This man was not offering her a rescue. He was offering her a partnership. There was a difference, and she felt it precisely. Her other hand lifted, reached toward his. She felt the cool metal of the ring beginning to slide over her knuckle. The boardroom doors opened, not knocked on, not gently pushed. Opened, both doors simultaneously, with the particular authority of people who have not considered the possibility that they might be interrupting something. 2 guards came first. Then a woman. She was tall in the way that people are tall when they have spent their entire lives being looked at and have organized their posture around it. She wore traditional attire, deep burgundy and gold oak, the kind made not bought, and she moved through the room like someone processing a property she had come to inspect. She was perhaps 35. She was extraordinary looking in the way that royalty sometimes is, not warmly beautiful but compelling. The kind of face that stopped rooms not through approachability but through sheer force of presence. She looked at Alex. Alex. Her voice was measured, formal, a voice that had learned over years to land with weight. You cannot marry this girl. Adesua's hand had gone still. The ring was halfway on. Alex stood up straight. Something in him had shifted. Not fear, but a recognition. Like a man who has been waiting for a bill to arrive and has just heard the knock at the door. Ades, he said, the merger with the Onitsha kingdom was signed by your father 20 years ago. She stepped further into the room, unhurried, her guards flanking her at a precise distance. The land this building sits on, the land the entire Adeleke Tech corporate campus occupies, it passes to the Onitsha royal estate if you contract a marriage outside the agreed terms. Your father understood this. My father, Alex said carefully, made many agreements I was not consulted on. You were a child. He was protecting your legacy. He was protecting his ambitions with my future as the currency. The room was very quiet. Adesua had not moved. She was still sitting in the CEO chair, the ring still halfway on her finger, her eyes moving between the two of them with the careful attention of someone reading a document they had not been given enough context to understand. Alex, Ades said, and her voice shifted slightly, less formal. Something underneath it that was not warmth exactly but was adjacent to it, something personal and old. I am not your enemy in this. I did not write the agreement. I am here because I was told you needed to understand the terms before you made a decision that cannot be undone. Who told you? Alex asked. Emeka? Something flickered across Ades's face, brief and quickly controlled. Emeka contacted my family's legal office 3 days ago, she said. He indicated you were about to make a personal decision that would affect the land agreement and suggested we send a representative. Of course he did, Alex said quietly. His intent may have been interference, she said. The agreement itself is still real. Your father's signature is on it. My father's signature is on it. The terms are enforceable. Adesua's voice came from the chair. Quiet, steady, surprising them both. Alex. He turned to look at her. Who is she? He held her gaze for a moment. Then, with the particular honesty of a man who is done performing things he does not believe in, he said it plainly. My fiancée, as of an agreement made when I was 7 years old. The ring stopped moving. Adesua looked at it on her finger. Halfway on. She looked at Adese, composed, watching, a woman whose own position in this story was not as simple as Emeka had designed it to appear. She looked at Alex, who was looking at her with the expression of a man who has spent 11 years building walls and in the space of one day has been completely disassembled. I see, Adesua said. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. She reached down and removed the ring from her finger with careful hands and placed it on the desk in front of her. The sound it made, small, precise, glass on wood, was the loudest sound in the room. She stood up. I told you I wanted my old life back, she said. Her voice was even. I think I meant it. Adesua, what does the agreement say exactly? Her eyes moved to Adese. I'd like to understand it. Adese looked at her with an expression that shifted slightly, the inspection quality softening into something more evaluating, less dismissive. She had expected, perhaps, panic, or aggression, or the particular shrillness that people in positions of power often project onto women who have less of it. She had not expected this. The Adeleke family retains ownership of the corporate land in perpetuity, Adese said, on the condition that the controlling bloodline maintains a formal alliance with the Onitsha royal house through marriage within 2 generations. Your father was the first generation. You are the second. If you contract an outside marriage, the land reverts. And the company without the land? Adesua asked. Adese paused. Significantly weakened. The original infrastructure is built on the base campus. The land value is also collateralized against the primary debt instruments. So the company collapses, Adesua said simply. Substantially. Adesua nodded slowly. She looked at the ring on the desk. She looked at Alex. Something was happening behind her eyes. Not devastation, not resignation, but something working, something calculating. The same quality she had in her father's study watching his screens, recognizing a pattern that others were moving through without seeing. And the agreement, she said, is with the Onitsha royal house. Specifically. Yes. Not specifically with you. Adese's eyes sharpened. No. With my family's institution. So if the Onitsha royal house determined that the merger could be satisfied through a different mechanism, a financial merger, say, rather than a personal one, the land agreement would still be honored. Silence. Alex was looking at Adesua with an expression that was trying very hard to stay neutral and failing completely. Adese tilted her head. That would depend on whether my family considered it equivalent consideration. Would they? I cannot speak for my family on a matter of this significance. But you can speak to them, Adesua said. And the Adeleke Tech Trust, which is now, as of last night, majority controlled by me, could propose a corporate partnership with the Onitsha royal estate that satisfies the original intent of the agreement without requiring Alex to marry someone he was assigned to at age 7. The room was quiet for a long time. Adese looked at Adesua. Something in her expression had changed fundamentally. The regal distance had not disappeared. It was structural, part of her. But behind it something that functioned like respect had arrived and seated itself. You are, she said slowly, the cleaning girl. I was, Adesua said. I think my job description changed last night. Adese looked at Alex, then back at Adesua. Then she did something none of them expected. She smiled. It was small and brief and contained, but it was real. I will need to speak with my family's legal team, she said. This is not a decision I can make tonight. I know, Adesua said. Take your time. Adese inclined her head. Not a bow, but an acknowledgement. She looked at Alex one last time. Your father, she said, also chose who he loved over what was arranged for him. It destroyed some things and built others. She paused. I hope your choices build more than they destroy. She walked out with the same composure she had walked in with. The guards fell into formation behind her. The doors closed. The room was silent. Alex looked at Adesua. She was still standing behind the desk, slightly breathless now, the ring on the wood between them. That, he said, was the most extraordinary thing I have ever watched happen. She seemed reasonable, Adesua said. Her voice was not entirely steady. I thought if she was reasonable. You thought in the middle of being blindsided by a royal fiancé, Alex said, about corporate restructuring as an alternative to a land dispute. My father's daughter, she said softly. Alex came around the desk. He stopped in front of her. He picked up the ring from the desk surface and held it in his palm. The question, he said, is still open. She looked at the ring, at him, at the Lagos night now pressing dark and lit against the windows, the city blinking and alive and absolutely indifferent to the extraordinary things that sometimes happened inside its towers. The land question isn't resolved, she said. No. The company is technically in my name and neither of us fully knows what that means yet. Also true. Your VP just got fired and escorted out by EFCC officers, and we haven't eaten anything since this morning, and we have approximately 900 things to sort out before any of this makes sense. Comprehensive list, he said. So if I say yes, she said slowly, I want it to be clean, not in the middle of all of this. Not in a room that still smells like today. He closed his fingers around the ring. Okay, he said. Okay. You set the terms. You own the company. I'm just the most loyal employee. She laughed again. That same sudden, genuine laugh that had surprised him the first time and undid him exactly the same way the second time. Let's eat, she said. And then we fix the things that need fixing. And then you let me ask you again, he said. Properly. Without an audience. Deal, she said. 3 months later, Lagos was still Lagos. The same traffic. The same sun, arriving every morning like it had a personal grievance. The same city, loud and brilliant and sprawling in all directions, building itself new every single day over the ruins and foundations of everything it used to be. Adeleke Tech was different. Not dramatically different, not yet. Change of the kind that actually holds takes longer than 3 months, and Adesua knew this with the patience of a woman who had cleaned buildings long enough to understand that deep cleaning and surface cleaning were not the same thing. Surface cleaning made things look right. Deep cleaning made them actually be right. You could not rush the second kind. But there were signs. The 40th floor had a new layout. Not because she had torn anything down, but because she had opened it up, moved the meeting rooms so they connected, removed the desk arrangement that had made the space feel like a hierarchy of access, replaced the cold lighting with something warmer. It still looked expensive. It looked like somewhere people could think. The Zen Den was no longer restricted. She had not made it public, but she had given access to the senior engineering team, who had started using it for deep focus work sessions and who had, within 6 weeks, shipped a product update that generated more revenue than anything Adeleke Tech had launched in the previous 18 months. Her name was on the door downstairs in the small embossed text that building signs used for senior leadership. She had asked for the smallest possible font. The building manager had made it 3 sizes larger than requested, and she had not fought him on it, which was either wisdom or exhaustion, and most days she could not tell the difference. Emeka was being prosecuted. The EFCC case was building with the particular slowness that institutional cases always built at, but it was building. Alex's legal team had been thorough. The shell company routing records were detailed and damning. Adesua had heard through David Okonkwo, who told her these things in the careful tone of a man still deciding who the most important person in the building was, that Emeka's lawyers were already trying to negotiate. She hoped they did not succeed, but she had stopped spending energy on it. That was Alex's domain now, and he handled it with the precise, detached efficiency of someone who had closed that chapter and was only revisiting it to make sure it stayed closed. Adesua had called. 14 days after the boardroom, her family's legal team sent a formal proposal. The Onitsha royal estate was interested in a corporate alliance, a board seat, a cultural investment partnership, joint equity in a new digital infrastructure project that Adesua had apparently been trying to get family support for since her mid-20s and had never succeeded in convincing her conservative elders about until now. The call with Adesua herself lasted 40 minutes. Adesua had taken it alone, which Alex respected. Afterward, she had sat in her office, she still had to remind herself it was hers, and looked out at Lagos for a long time before calling Alex in. "She's not what Emeka sent her to be," Adesua had said. "No," Alex agreed. "She's trying to build something too. Her family doesn't take her seriously because she's a woman with ideas in an institution built on precedent." "Sounds familiar. Don't push it." The partnership was agreed in principle within 30 days. A board seat for an Onitsha Royal House representative, Adesua's younger brother, who was a software engineer with a master's from Imperial College and who had been, according to his sister, going quietly insane managing ceremonial duties when he wanted to build things. The land agreement was satisfied. The company was whole. Alex told Adesua, on the evening they signed the final documents, that her father would have found the whole thing deeply pleasing. She had cried a little at that, turned away so he could not see it, and then turned back when she had it under control. He had seen it. He had said nothing, which was the right thing to do, and the fact that he knew it was the right thing to do was something she was still adjusting to. This man, who had spent years perfecting coldness, turned out to have a very precise understanding of when warmth was required and when space was the kinder thing. She was learning him in the way you learn something genuinely complex. Not all at once, not from the outside, but from the inside out, detail by detail, revision by revision. She thought she might spend a long time at it. She did not mind. He asked her again on a Saturday morning. Not in the office. Not at sunset, not with a speech. He asked her in her mother's kitchen in Surulere, where he had arrived at 8 a.m. with a bag of groceries because he had learned that her mother believed people could be assessed by whether they arrived empty-handed, and he had asked if he could make breakfast, which her mother had found so improbable that she had laughed for approximately 2 minutes before handing him the pan. He was not a good cook. He had burned the eggs slightly. Her mother had corrected him 3 times, and he had accepted every correction without defensiveness, which her mother later described as the most important thing I observed. After breakfast, when her mother had gone to sit on the balcony with her tea and the particular satisfied expression of a woman whose opinions had been confirmed, Alex had stood at the kitchen sink washing the pan he had burned, and Adesua had been beside him drying things, and he had said, without turning, without ceremony, without the velvet box because it was already in her dresser drawer where he had placed it the week before while she was in a meeting, "The ring is in your room. Top drawer under the blue fabric. You can wear it when you decide. If you decide." She had put the dish down. "Not if," she said. He had turned then. She had been looking at him with the same flat, direct expression she had used in the corridor that first day, the look that had stopped him cold because it saw him without the performance. "When?" she said. "When?" he repeated. "Give me 3 weeks. I have 2 board meetings and a product launch, and my mother wants to meet your aunt." "My aunt is terrifying." "Good. So is my mother. They'll get along." He had smiled. The real one, the one Lagos had never seen, the one that undid the Golden Boy construction completely and left just a man standing in a kitchen in Surulere with burned egg on his sleeve. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon, she walked into his office, her office, their office. She was still working on the grammar, and she was wearing the ring. He looked at it. He looked at her. She sat down across from him and opened her laptop and said, "We need to talk about the Q3 projections." And he said, "Yes, we do." And they talked about the Q3 projections, and somewhere in the middle of the numbers he reached across the desk and held her hand for exactly 10 seconds before letting go and returning to the spreadsheet. It was not the ending that stories usually told. There was no final sunset, no orchestra, no moment where the city paused to acknowledge what had happened. Lagos did not pause for anything. But something had been built, carefully, under pressure, from materials neither of them had expected to be working with, and it held. There is a version of the story that is just a love story. Boy meets girl. Girl changes boy. They end up together. But that version misses what Aladil Bello understood when he built a god key and left it to a daughter who did not yet know what she was carrying. He understood that the right tool in the right hands at the right moment can stop a collapse that nobody else even noticed was happening. He understood that legacy is not money. It is not property. It is not a name on a building. It is the specific knowledge you leave in the people closest to you, sometimes without their awareness, sometimes wrapped in something as ordinary as a worn USB drive with electrical tape initials. He understood that the most powerful forces in any system are often the ones that work quietly, that do not announce themselves, that arrive without ceremony and execute cleanly and walk away without taking credit. His daughter walked into a burning room with a mop and a piece of old software and saved an empire she did not know she was saving for reasons she did not fully understand, using resources she did not know she had. And the man whose floors she cleaned looked up from his loss and found, in the person standing between him and the damage, something he had spent 11 years of deliberate coldness trying to convince himself he did not need. The lesson is not that love conquers all. Love is not a strategy. Love is what happens when you stop performing and let something real arrive. The lesson is that what your parents leave you is rarely what you think they've left you. Sometimes the inheritance is a locked drive and a password and a pattern you learned sitting on someone's lap at age 11 that you carry for 20 years without knowing it is saving you for something. The lesson is that the people who do not flinch when you test them are worth your attention. The people who clean up after you and see your failures and choose to help anyway. Not because they owe you anything but because something in them refuses to watch things burn. Those people are rare. If you have one in your life, stop performing for them. The lesson is that villains rarely look like villains. They look like men in well-fitted suits who have been in the room so long everyone has forgotten to question them. And the final lesson, the one Adesua carried out of that building in her pocket next to a worn USB drive, is that your old life is never actually available to return to. Every morning you wake up, you are different from the person who went to sleep. The only direction available is forward, into the version of yourself that the things you have survived have made. She had come to clean floors. She left building an empire. She kept the USB drive in her desk. Top drawer. It was not a weapon anymore, and it was not just a tool. It was her father, the compressed, portable version of everything he had been and wanted and understood, and she carried it the way you carry the people you love after they are gone. Carefully, close, with the knowledge that they are still doing something useful, still working, still in the room. And that is the story of the cleaning girl who bought the billionaire. Thank you for watching all the way to this final word. If you stayed until now, you are the kind of person this channel is for. Someone who believes that the best stories are not just entertainment but instruction. They show us versions of courage and love and loyalty and intelligence that remind us what we are capable of. If the story moved you, stayed with you, made you think of someone who left you something you are still learning to understand, like this video, it takes 2 seconds and it tells us that stories like this matter to you, which tells us to keep making them. Subscribe if you are not already here. We tell stories every week. Stories of people who were underestimated, overlooked, assigned to the background of other people's narratives, and who found, in exactly the right moment, that they were the main character all along. Drop a comment. Tell us which part hit hardest. Tell us who you thought of. Tell us if you have a God key of your own, something someone left you that you are still learning to use. We read every single one. Until next time, stay real, stay building, and never let anyone reduce you to a job title.